now to an extraordinary story of the American dream come true, the revealing portrait of a young black man, Dr. Luke Wood, an outsider who was propelled from the margins into the mainstream of academic society. An adopted child whose mother was in prison and who was himself suspended from school 42 times for wanton truancy, but who, instead of allowing himself to crumble, gathered himself together and turned his life around to become the president of one of America's great institutions of higher learning, California State University, Sacramento, or Sac State. At the age of just 41, Dr. Luke Wood is the youngest person ever to lead a university. If ever you needed a pick-me-up story of inspiration, this would have to be it. And believe me, we need lots of stories like this in Nigeria. A story of conflicts, challenges, resilience, transformation, and educational fervor that helped shape one of the great academic minds in the US today. And I'm suitably delighted to say that I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Luke Wood, president of California State University, Sacramento. How nice to see you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. So the president of California State University, Sacramento, at just 41. I mean, walk us through briefly what it's been like for you.
Well, it's been an amazing experience coming to Sacramento State. One reason for that is I actually graduated from the institution. So I went to school at Sacramento State. I have my bachelor's degree from Sacramento State. I got my master's degree, my first master's from Sacramento State. My twin brother went to school at Sacramento State, and I met my wife at Sacramento State. So
your wife's Nigerian?
Yes, her family is from Akwa Ibom State, and my twin brother, his wife, was from Delta State. So we're very proud of our family's
Nigerian links.
Yes.
Well, we're happy to have you here. And what an extraordinary life you've had. I mean, as you said, you have an identical twin brother, and both of you were born when your mother, unfortunately, was in prison. What was she in prison for?
Violence against her husband at the time. It was a tragic situation of violence and, unfortunately, substance abuse and mental health challenges. And she gave birth to us when she was in prison, and then we became what were called wards of the court and went into the foster care system. So we were in foster care for several years, and then we were adopted in a home that was a foster home. So we grew up in a foster home. And here's a kind of an interesting fact. Because we grew up in a foster home, like there was people who were short-term care, long-term care, what we call guardianship. And so I have over 350 brothers and sisters who went through the same home that I did.
Wow. And did you ever get to know your mother?
I actually did. I got to meet her 3 times, and none of the experiences were particularly good. The first time I met her, I remember going and finding her and basically driving down from Sacramento to San Francisco, and then walking up into this building that was very scary. It was basically, like a drug house or something along those lines. And so I went and I knocked on the door, and she opened up the door. And for the first time, I not only did she open the door, I saw myself in her. I mean, I could see my resemblance.
Yes.
And I said, "Hi, my name is Luke. I'm your son." And she slammed the door in my face and let out this blood-curdling scream. And it was so scary that me and my wife, then girlfriend, we ran down the hall because we thought she was coming out to do violence.
Right.
And so that was the first time I met her. There was only one good exchange I ever had with her. I went back about 6 months later. It took a lot of courage to go back because it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, of course it is.
And
Very
when I knocked on the door the second time, I said again, "Hi, my name is Luke. I'm your son." And she goes, "I thought you were." And then she just closed the door. And then I tore up a piece of paper and I wrote a couple questions, and I slid underneath the door. And it went back and forth a couple times with her answering a few questions. And that was the only meaningful exchange that I ever had with her, was through a door and a piece of paper.
Well, it sounds like a very painful thing, but I can see how emotionally mature you are. Clearly, you've handled it very well. And you and your brother where African Americans are African Americans. I mean, black essentially, and
Yes.
your adopted parents were white.
Yeah.
And you lived in an all-white town. What was it like growing up in that environment?
So the town that I grew up in, so I was born in Oakland and then raised in far northern California in a town called McLeod. So understand about McLeod, it's a town of 1,600 people with one gas station, no stoplights, and a high school of 100 kids.
Presumably it's got one horse, eh?
Yes. It's a very rural area.
Right.
Obviously there wasn't necessarily a reflection of us. I will say that it is a beautiful town. It is an amazing environment, but like anywhere else in America, there's racism, and racism was definitely part of my experience. You know, when you introduced me, you mentioned that I had been suspended in school. You know, that wasn't simply because I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. It was because I was being targeted. And so,
yeah, that happens in America, doesn't it?
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And particularly the research shows that it happens to black children, regardless of what their ethnic origin is. So whether you're Caribbean American, African American, Nigerian American, we find these patterns to be the same.
And I mean, when you were in, the class you were talking about, you know, you said your twin brother was suspended, you were suspended. I find it astonishing that you did not, how you sort of ended up shaping or framing your perspective of schooling from that. I mean, how did you manage that?
Well, you know, I went from that very terrible year where I spent more time, it felt like, out of the classroom than I did in the classroom. And I went from being a student who really loved school to a student who didn't like school at all. I became disassociated with it. And then the following year, I had one of the most amazing teachers I've ever had. Mr. Guggenheimer, we called him Mr. G. And what he saw in me was someone who was talented, someone who liked to write short stories, and he invested time in me. And so one of the things that I took away from that experience is that one educator can change the trajectory of a student if you invest in them and you care about them. And so I've also taken that issue of school suspensions and made it part of the research that I do. And one of the things I tell students when they come to Sacramento State, they're walking into the campus, we have this convocation where we welcome all the new students, and I say this every time I see them, that the good experiences that you have in your life, and even more so the bad ones, they perfectly prepare you for your purpose in this world. And so I've taken the challenges that I've experienced and I've used that as fuel to advocate for foster youth, against issues like school suspensions, for black dignity in education, and for students who experience food and housing insecurities and other challenges while they're traversing higher education.
And I mean, was it that teacher that made you decide to become an educator? Because let's face it, although he helped turn your life around, you became a very brilliant student. I mean, you did very well in school subsequently, and you could have been anything that you wanted to be, really.
Well, you know, he was the first, or I should say the second teacher that I had who really invested in me. My kindergarten teacher did as well. And then I ended up having a series of really effective educators who saw me differently. Now, that's not to say that every experience was good. You know, sometimes you have an educator who doesn't like you, doesn't believe in you. When they see you, they see only frailties. And then sometimes you have educators who truly are invested in your success. And I ended up having the blessing throughout high school of having that experience with several other educators. But then when I went to school at Sacramento State, I met a group of faculty members who created a village around me and other students who were in the black community. And so I would say that is probably what sparked my desire, was actually engaging with faculty at Sacramento State.
And was Sacramento State, did it not have a lot of black students?
It didn't have a lot of black students. The population has certainly grown. Now we have over 2,100 black students, the largest in the California State University system. But then it was a much smaller population, and it certainly felt isolated. You felt marginalized. And at the same time, again, if you take those challenging experiences, you can find the beauty in it. And so we created this incredible group of students who are supported by an incredible group of faculty and staff. And when I look now at every one of us, everyone's doing something powerful in the community. So it can work.
And I mean, today, of course, you're not just an educator, you're a professor, you're president of the University of California State University, Sacramento. Do you see that, as a lot of people do, as the American dream come true?
You know, I absolutely see it as the American dream come true. I mean, if you think about it, I was born, my mom was in prison. I was in foster care. I'm what some people would call a quote unquote throwaway kid. And I went from that experience and challenges in school to being the president of the university that I graduated from. And here's the thing, it wasn't just that like I ended up in this role. In my first year in college at Sacramento State, I came into the college and something happened that changed my life. Everyone had always told me, go to college, that's important, everyone should go to college. And so I was like, oh yeah, well I should go to college. It just seemed like the next natural step. But no one told me that students go to college but don't always graduate. And we walked into this room with all these students around and they said, and they still do this in some places, they said, look to your left, look to your right, only one of you will graduate. And I think that they were saying that to encourage us, like to work hard, but it wasn't. It was very disappointing. And so I said, wait a second, people don't go to college but don't graduate? We have to do something about it. And so my sophomore year of college, I went around and told everyone, I mean, I was obnoxious about this, telling people I was going to be the president of Sacramento State.
That's extraordinary.
And so I'm manifesting through God and God's blessing.
Because I was going to ask you, I mean, did you actually set out to become the president of Sac State? But it sounds like you did, actually.
Yes, I did. I set out to do it as a young kid. I mean, I was maybe 19 years old when I said, I'm going to be the president of the university, and at 41, it came to fruition. And so I think that if you put your mind to anything, if there's a goal that you want and you have dogged determination and work ethic to get there, it'll happen.
But how did you actually become the president?
Well, first I became a faculty member. So I was at San Diego State University for 12 years on faculty there. So my discipline is education. So I like to tell people that I teach people how to teach people, and do a lot of work on school suspensions and issues of race in education. And then I went through the ranks, became a tenured professor, and then a full professor, and then a distinguished professor. I've written a lot.
You've written a lot of books. I mean, at last count, you had written at least 16 books.
Yes, I've written 16 books that have been published. I've actually written a couple books that I decided I didn't want to publish. So you just write things for yourself too.
Absolutely.
And so I went from that to basically being in administration. And prior to this role, I served as vice president for student affairs and campus diversity at San Diego State, which was an amazing experience. And then Sacramento State opened up. And I think this is an important point. I didn't want to be a president for the sake of being a president. I wanted to be a president at Sacramento State because I see the beauty in the institution and what it can create. And I feel like we're creating an amazing experience for the students.
Well, it certainly sounds like this. And that desire to create change, create opportunities through education, is that what has brought you to Nigeria? Or are you just sort of taking a trip down here?
Oh no, it's definitely the goal of being here. And the goal of here is really to share the good news about Sacramento State. So we've been meeting with government officials, we've been meeting with high school leaders, university leaders, and talking about Sacramento State, talking about the unique programs and opportunities that we have, and making it people aware of the fact that we're a very affordable alternative. With our international students, there's a lot of universities in the United States. You can have a lot of choices, but one of the things that I think a lot of people look at is, what is the bottom line? How much is it going to cost me? Because education is expensive. And the beauty of Sacramento State is that we're part of the state of California, and so the state helps to subsidize the education, so the cost of attending Sacramento State is much lower than most universities.
Well, what percentage of your money does the state subsidize? The reason I'm asking you that is that Nigeria at the moment, a lot of discussion about finding alternative means for universities to raise their funds.
Yeah. So I would say it's the majority of our money is actually subsidized by the state of California. Students also do pay tuition and fees, which helps to also curb that cost. But we're definitely here's the thing, because that's not true with every state in the United States. There's people have almost a joke that they say, are you state located or state supported?
Right.
We're not just state located, we're also state supported, and that's important.
Okay. And I understand that your university has already had a few exchange sort of programs and so on with Nigerian educational institutions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Nigeria is a priority for us, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'm not just saying this because I'm married to a Nigerian American, though I may be biased in saying this, but I really believe that Nigerians are the best students on the planet. And that's not just, coming out of a statement from nowhere. If you look at the most educated group of people in the United States are Nigerians. And if you go into the classroom, you see Nigerian students, they just show up differently. They work hard. If they don't know, they go and they ask. They are committed to the community. It's just a different group of students. And so for us, it's a priority for Sacramento State because we know that we want to be the best university. And so being the best university also means that you have to recruit the best students.
Indeed. And your wife, I mean, does she have sort of current links to Nigeria, or is she sort of American but with Nigerian roots sort of thing?
So she's both. So she's American with Nigerian roots. Her family is from Akwa Ibom State.
Sure.
And actually has family here in Abuja, and so we've actually been here visiting family.
Because I'm wondering if you've been eating Nigerian grub with Nigerian food.
Oh, absolutely. So I eat Nigerian food here, but I also eat Nigerian food at home. So She makes me great jollof rice, egusi soup, fufu, everything.
Because the people from there, from Akwa Ibom and Cross River, are known to be excellent cooks.
They are. They are. And the weight that I have gained since being married to her is a testament to that.
I like that. So, I mean, how long are you in Nigeria for?
Just a few days. In fact, I'll be leaving tomorrow night. But we've been able to, I think, accomplish a lot of really important goals. And so I feel very happy with this trip. And then tomorrow I'll have the privilege of presenting at a conference, the throwaway conference, which is one of the main reasons that I'm here, and being able to talk about how do we, prioritize peace building, conflict resolution, and address people who have been displaced, marginalized, and minoritized in this society.
And I'm just looking at pictures. We were just looking at pictures of you with Peter Obi there, who's a well-known Nigerian politician. I wonder what you guys were talking about.
We had an amazing conversation. First of all, he is just a powerful individual, and he said something to me, and I had to write it down afterwards because it was so thoughtful. He said, "We don't need money," talking about Nigeria. "We need knowledge, because with knowledge comes money, and with knowledge comes success."
That's an important point.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful point that shows that education truly can transform lives.
So, I mean, you're planning to build this relationship with Nigeria and kind of nurture it. Are you going to come back here anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be back here, I would say, frequently. And that was part of the commitment that I had when I was talking to people. Here's the thing. And when people talk about partnerships, oftentimes they see a partnership as send us your students. That's not a partnership. A partnership is, what are we doing to have a reciprocal relationship so that we're building together? And so part of my commitment is that I'm not just going to send a staff person here. I'm going to come personally because it's important to me.
And has it been most Abuja, essentially? This is your first trip, is it?
This is, as president, this is my first trip to Nigeria.
Right.
It's not my first time to Nigeria. I've had the privilege of being all over Lagos, Abuja, Uyo, Cat,
So you've got
Calabar.
some familiarity.
Yes, absolutely. But this trip has been primarily for Abuja, and my plan is next time is to have more of an opportunity to go across the country.
And of course, you didn't just meet Peter Obi, you also met the Minister of State for Education.
Yes.
What were you talking about with him?
So our conversation was about establishing a memorandum and having an agreement on sending students to the United States, but specifically to Sacramento State. And so we have similar agreements, one with the nation of South Africa, one with that's forthcoming with the nation of Rwanda, and so this was going to be the third one focused on Nigeria. And we see those three nations as essentially the anchor of our footprint and our presence in Africa. And I have to say, she's a powerful person. I could sense the mind of an astute, learned professor, and it was a great conversation.
Well, it's been a great conversation with you, and I want to thank you very much indeed for coming in and for coming to Nigeria and caring about what is going on here, and hopefully a relationship, whatever relationship there is between your university and Nigeria, will sort of grow. And both sides will benefit from it. So I want to thank you very much indeed. Dr. Luke Wood is the president of California State University, Sacramento. Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.